Hey everyone, I want to showcase this add-on I made for Blender. Cycles has an option where you can enable or disable motion blur for a specific object, but EEVEE doesn't have this option. This add-on makes it so that it does. It's more of a hack than its own thing, so there's a couple of caveats, but we'll get into that. This should be the thumbnail of the video. I haven't decided yet, but this is just a basic file with a basic animation. We're going to be rendering frame 6, and there should be motion blur on frame 6. I haven't enabled 16 steps, 8 motion blur steps. And in this menu right here, these will be the options for your scene render. You can enable or disable the add-on. And here's the important part. The add-on does not use the normal renders that these use, like F12, Control F12. By default, they are F10 and Control F10. It has to be separate. So you can use these buttons or rebind these buttons to I don't know, Control F12 or F12. You have to replace the original ones. That is if you want. You can always just keep it separate. Anyway, if I render this frame, I'm gonna press render image. As you can see, like how the objects are moving in the viewport, everything is motion blurred, and this is expected for just enabling motion blur. This is without the add-on. Now, in every object, there is going to be a menu called Selective Motion Blur, and you can choose whether or not you want something to be motion blurred or not. So here, it's disabled, but as you saw, it was still motion blurred because we used the normal render. And other objects also have this. So this one, the sphere is motion blurred. This cone is not motion blurred. This camera, that's not actually a camera. If I go to this menu and I press render image, or I can press F10, which I set it to the shortcut, there is going to be a slight delay because it's doing its thing. It's doing all the motion blur stuff until the window comes up, which it just did. Why is it over here? You can see that, well, I'll wait for it to finish. But you can see here, okay, so this sphere is motion blurred. This cylinder is motion blurred. The metal ball, you can see, if I can click things, these are motion blurred. Whereas if I pull it up again, the cube isn't motion blurred. Her hand isn't motion blurred, which I actually forgot to show you guys. I have driven this hand to the armature because part of the benefit, it's like a double-edged sword, right? It's individual object motion blurring. So even objects in armatures are able to be individually blurred. That's, like I said, a double-edged sword because you're going to need to drive every object. You can see if I edit the driver, it's being driven by this custom property I put in the armature, which is this one. So this enables or disables every object in this armature. Another thing I want to note is that you can only see this in the render. You can't see this in the viewport. So if I do this, you can see like everything is gonna motion blur, right? But you can't see the selective motion blur until you actually render with the add-on. I would like to point out that when you hit render with the add-on, on the outliner over here, you're gonna see that your objects are actually going to be duplicated. And that's essentially how the individual object motion blurring works. It duplicates your object, sets it to not render, and then in the new object, it deletes that animation data, and only in that object. So it doesn't delete like any of your own animation data. And it renders that duplicate instead of your original object. So it's kind of a hack. But this is also part of the reason why it may or may not take a little while before it actually starts rendering, because it's doing all of this. And it only does it in the render. You can see I canceled the render. There's also this menu that pops up. It's an optional thing in the add-ons preferences, but you can see that when it stops rendering, it gets rid of these objects and everything is turned back to normal. One thing I would like to point out is in this donut I made, this is my first model, by the way. In this donut, you can see there's a GeoNodes modifier. It's what adds the sprinkles to the thing. However, one thing that is really important is that for GeoNodes like these, or anything that makes instances really, you need to realize these instances. Otherwise, they won't render. So if I apply this GeoNodes modifier here, you would see that the sprinkles are still there, right? It's fine because their instances are realized. But if I remove it, their instances are no longer realized, which is better for performance, but however, if I apply it, it's not there anymore. And the same thing will happen if you render this without the realized instances node. If you try to see this is the icing, right? If you try to set the icing to, let's see, not motion blur, and I'm gonna hit F10, you're going to see that the sprinkles aren't there anymore, and that is a bit of a limitation with the add-on, is that you need to realize your instances. Some instances, at least I have found, cannot be realized, like particle effects. I've tried looking for a way to have the instances realized while still having the animation data of the particle, and I haven't found a way to do that. That is a bit of a limitation. If you don't need to deal with that, then this node at the end should be enough. You could also just put it wherever, depending on your node. One of the neat things about this add-on is that it not only works with lights, but also cameras. So if I select this camera right here, and I go to select the motion blur, you can see that motion blur is here. You can turn it on and off, and it essentially works the same thing. It duplicates the camera, makes that the active camera, and then the camera is no longer motion blurring. It's a really weird and strange effect. You can see if I render it right now, I'm going to turn it on, and if I press F10 to render it, you can see that the floor is motion blurred, the other stuff is motion blurred, except this one, which I will get to. But if I turn it off, press F10, you can see the floor isn't motion blurred anymore, even though it's not the floor that I'm moving, it's the camera. So I can zoom out here, you can see this is what's happening, and when I press render, it's not motion blurred. It's a really weird effect that maybe that's kind of niche. Anyway, on True MBI, so True MBI is only available to everything except cameras and armatures, which armatures, by the way, don't have this option. They're not there. True MBI, which stands for True Motion Blur Immunity, is basically just this object never motion blurs. It's kind of like cycles, I think. I've never really used cycles all that much, but this object, no matter how much it moves, it can move like this way, the camera could move like this, it will never motion blur. So if you want that, you can just enable that, and then in the render, in this render, actually it's a lot better if I show you if the camera is motion blurred. And in fact, I can probably just do something like, if I do something like this. Okay, so the camera is like moving really fast here, right? If I render this, why does it keep appearing here? You can see everything is like super motion blurred except this object. It's separated like this because when you disable motion blur for this option, it basically makes it so that Blender will think it's not moving, but the camera moving, like something like this, will still blur it. So if True MBI is enabled, the add-on is going to parent this object to the camera, like this, so that no matter how much the camera is moving, the object, or the camera, is always going to see this object as moving along with it, so then it never motion blurs. That's basically how it works. Last thing I want to show you guys is parent slots, which is this menu right here. Parent slots will only work if these two are disabled, and if motion blur, let's say you disable motion blur, it's not going to move or anything. Blender is going to think it's not moving, and so therefore it doesn't motion blur it. But on a platform like this, if you want this to not motion blur, but still motion blur as it's on the platform. By the way, this is parented to the platform. You can see this object is the platform, that's its name, right? And it's parented, or I guess has this as the child. So what I need to do is I can add in an object. I can select whatever object I want. It's right here, it's the platform, and I can have it here. I already have it in here, right? You can also add multiple parents, but every object can only have one parent at a time. It will only take the highest one with the check mark. But basically what it does is it makes it so that the object doesn't self-motion blur. So if you have like a character that's waving their arms waving around isn't going to motion blur. But if they're on top of a car and the car drives off, they're still going to motion blur. I really hope that makes sense. And yeah, that's the add-on. You can find the link to the add-on in the description. Right now it's only on GitHub. I do plan on uploading it to some other places, but right now it's only on GitHub. That's all I have to say.